Alrighty folks, back with Ross and Will, and we've moved over to the Shatterpoint zone here with you guys at the UK Games Expo. As someone who is a recent Shatterpoint convert, I have moved over into the wonderful skirmish world that you guys have done. I managed to paint up Vader and his clutch of stormtroopers in the course of an afternoon and get it ready for the day afterwards for my games. Oh, it was so good. A little bit of dry brushing. Perfect. For those people who aren't aware, what is sort of Shatterpoint and how does it kind of differ from Legion, which is obviously the other game that you guys do?
So what's with Shatterpoint is it's moments in time with Star Wars, right? So you can find these characters where they are in that moment, like with the camera things. So like we get like Han and Luke and Leia, like on the Death Star escape, coming into those things there. And you get to have those moments where it's a skirmish-based game with high elevated terrain, very thematic moments, and you're going on to like either capture points and do these things, but it's a different game. I think as you're playing through, you're like, oh my gosh, here's my track, here's my stuff, and it's a really kind of a fun way to play with Star Wars in a new way. Chick?
Yeah, I mean, the original inspiration behind Shatterpoint was the idea, if Legion is the big climactic movie moments, right? If it is the realistic kind of representation of the Star Wars galaxy, Shatterpoint is the animated Saturday morning cartoon, right? And so in this game, there are stakes, but the stakes feel less I want to say like real in a way, in that you know that no matter what happens on the table, win or lose, those characters are going to come back next week and they're going to have more adventures. So it's really high octane energy. There's a lot of movement. We did things with like the order system, whereas in Legion it's about command and control. In Shatterpoint it's about reacting to what the Force gives you. And what that means is that you actually draw your activations off a stack that's completely randomized. And you have a couple of ways to manipulate that, but really what Shatterpoint does is it emphasizes tactics over strategy. So you have to think in the moment. Every turn in Shatterpoint is a puzzle where you're like, this isn't quite what I wanted. How do I make the best of it? How do I work my way out of this to come up with the best solution for what's being presented to me? And I think it creates a really dynamic dialogue between players back and forth, and it feels like those moments in the Saturday morning cartoons or like the animated Clone Wars series where you watch your heroes go in with a plan and then they lose the plan and now they're just scrambling to try to figure out what to do and come out on top.
I had a moment where I was playing with Ventress, and I was running her across the top of some of the buildings that you guys got, which are amazing anyway, of course. And I'd pulled her out earlier, and I got into a position where she was just completely out in the open. And obviously, she's a little bit of an assassin. She doesn't necessarily want to be out there.
Not her favorite spot.
And I was flipping through, and I was like, I've kind of run out of Force tokens to do anything with this. I think she's going to be a little bit in trouble. And then she got shot quite a lot. And she could only stop so many lightsaber blasts coming her way. No, bolter blasts.
Well, it's funny with her too, because like, you want to throw her out because she's so powerful, but like if you do it, you're gonna get stuck.
The other thing I wanted to point out as well is that you've kind of got, as you say, you've got this sort of like Saturday morning cartoon feel to it. All the box sets and things that you guys do are all really nicely themed.
Yeah.
How do you decide on sort of what goes into what? Is it based on just watching things like Clone Wars and Rebels and then deciding, or?
Yeah, I mean, the media is definitely kind of our guiding light for that, right? So with the starter box is a great example. So we wanted to kind of cover a couple of different time periods within the Clone Wars. So you have the Anakin with his 501st clones, you have Ventress, well, she's still with the Separatist Alliance and her B1s and droids, and that kind of takes you in the early season of Clone Wars. And then, because we were designing the starter right around the same time as season 7 of the Clone Wars was coming, we were like, wouldn't it be cool if we kind of showed the past of Clone Wars and then the present of Clone Wars in terms of where it was in its showing. And so we took Ahsoka when she's leading the Mandalorians with Bo-Katan against Maul and his Mandalorians as they're trying to take back Maul, or they're trying to take back a Mandalore. And it provides this kind of interesting like look at the range of these characters, where they are in time, right? Like that's a very specific Ahsoka. It's an Ahsoka from like 3 episodes of the show. The Anakin is a bit more generalized over the course of the show, but there's these moments and times that we can pull from and we can use those characters. And then it also kind of gives a nod to the fact that Shatterpoint, unlike Legion, which is a faction game where you're playing specifically within like Rebel Alliance or whatever, in Shatterpoint, because it's a bit of a dream big, like anybody can team up with anybody on a cartoon, you get a lot more freedom as a player. So if you want to take your Darth Vader squad and you want to put it with an Ahsoka squad, you can do that, right? If you want to kind of see how those things would work in your mind, or you want to tell your stories, you get to do that. And I think that's a really fun thing about skirmish games. It allows players to personalize their collections, the way in which they want to tell these stories. And of course, it opens up a lot of opportunities if you're into the list building and comboing aspect. And we did some really neat things with soft bonuses for like, everybody's got keywords, right? So what you'll find as you start playing the game is like you can mix anybody with anybody, but if you really want to dial up your ability to synergize, a lot of abilities have keywords to them. So for example, Clone Captain Rex can do something, but he does it better when he's doing it to clone troopers. And so maybe you want to take more clone troopers, maybe you don't. I think as a player of tabletop industries games, those kinds of questions, that kind of like deck building aspect is really interesting, and it's very fun. But it all goes back into creating those thematic boxes. So because we have this system of keywords and the way in which the abilities work, it really incentivizes us to think about, okay, every squad box is meant to be played right out of the box, right? You don't have to think about list building if you don't want to. You can just plug it into your strike team and play. So how are we looking at these things? Which characters make sense within the stories, with the primary characters and the secondary characters and that kind of stuff? So it's all story related.
One of the things that I've quite enjoyed when we started playing was, obviously you normally play with two teams and they sort of work together as a sort of combination. But we were just doing our sort of demo games just with simply one box.
Oh, sure.
And just learning to play that way on a slightly smaller table, because you normally play on a 3x3, but we sort of shrunk it down a little bit to 2x2. And it still felt like a really cool cinematic moment on the tabletop. The other thing I really enjoyed about it was the kind of ways you could do that sort of what-if scenario thing.
Oh, yeah.
So obviously I got my hands on I really loved like the Leia and the Luke and Han one with Chewie as they're escaping from the Death Star. Yeah. And I was like, what if Andor had survived, spoilers for Andor, and he was hanging out with them, and he could sort of like help them with their Death Star run and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, and it was all very cool.
Well,
so
then you get a Vader and a Krennic, right? And then you
oh my god, oh yeah, it's a grudge match for the centuries.
Oh yeah.
And like that combination, that what if you're talking about, right? It's really neat because all of those characters share the spy keyword, and so they actually synergize really well because they all tag off of that.
That was my thinking.
Right? Yeah, see? So not only did you get a cool what if that's thematic and interesting, but also from a gameplay perspective, you have so much to explore with that, and I think that's really fun.
My other combo is Darth Vader and his stormtroopers, and I bought Iden Verso along as well with Inferno Squad.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, that's my way I'm going with that one. When it comes to sort of like a little bit more in the in-depth of mechanics and stuff like that, one of the things that I really enjoy about Shatterpoint is that kind of flow chart that you guys have got for the damage system. So again, you can be very reactive in the way that you deal with certain situations. Obviously, you've got the card flips and things like that, but could you talk us through a little bit of that sort of like flow chart and sort of how that works?
So, yeah, in Shatterpoint, unlike a lot of miniatures games where successes on dice just equal like points of damage, because we had this vision of like retelling a Clone Wars episode, retelling the greatest like character moments in Star Wars, when you think about those moments, typically they're duels, right? They are two characters engaging in combat with each other. And one of the things that I love about Star Wars so much is the fact that the way a character fights tells you as much about the character as any of their lines do in the dialogue. My key example of that is if you think about the fight between Anakin and Obi-Wan at the end of Episode 3, right, on Mustafar. If you watch that scene with like over and over again, and you kind of start to pay attention to how the characters interact with each other in the battle, Anakin from the start he's going for the kill. He's going for
going ham.
Yeah, right.
He clearly is just going to remove Obi-Wan. But Obi-Wan is playing a very defensive game. Like, he's still trying to talk to Anakin, he's trying to talk him down, he's trying to reason with his friend. He really believes he can save him. And then you have that key moment where he's like, you know, from my perspective, the Jedi are the ones who are evil. And Obi-Wan flips. And all of a sudden, Obi-Wan's fighting style completely changes into this aggressive, like, my friend is gone, you are the enemy, I have to end your threat to the galaxy.
So frenetic at that point, yeah.
Oh,
yeah. And in my head, when we were working on the design and thinking about it, it was like, that's what I want to feel on the tabletop. I've always been fascinated in miniatures games, like, and there's been some great ones. Like, I think the old Confrontation combat system was really intriguing in terms of how you allocated dice, and it felt like you were changing, you were changing parries and strikes and blows. And then Arena Rex kind of was an inspiration for this too, where they did a really neat damage chart, which you can see that is an inspiration behind this, where you kind of flowed down and did different things. We kind of took those ideas and we put them into the next level, where it was like, all right, what if instead of just dealing damage, everything on your chart was an interesting choice? And with Shatterpoint, damage isn't the end-all be-all of the game. It's a very positional and maneuvering game, so there's a lot of shoves, there's a lot of displacement. And what that does is it creates that dance that you see where I can drive you back with my attacks, and then you can like parry and reposition and come back and push me. And so characters are never static on the table. And I think that, it's exciting to watch, it's exciting as a player, and I really think it helps the story unfold over the whole thing. It also allows us to dive into those characters and make them feel more. So Obi-Wan's Form 3, very defensive, very like, he's gonna put you in a position where the rest of his troops can deal with you. Anakin's like Form 5, super aggressive, just tons of damage, not a lot of, he's just gonna eliminate you from the table. And you start to really get a feel for, okay, what am I gonna do? And then we added an extra layer on top of it where primary characters, so your main characters in the game, the ones that kind of form the heads of your squads, they have two sides to their stance card, and you get to choose to flip that once during their activation. So now you have more options, right? You can do the high damage side on Anakin, or you can say he's being a bit more reserved and he's gonna like position you into a better spot so he gets a lot more shoves. And now as a player, you have all of these different tools in your toolbox to try to address the situations you have. And I love how it makes combat feel visceral. It feels like you're there, and you can watch the story play out. So that was a big win for us, and I was really excited to see players love that when the game came out and kind of talk more about it and get into it.
Yeah, it was a really interesting element of it that it took me like a turn to sort of grok it, and then I was like flipping the cards over and looking at the different ways it all worked, the switching up of damage and sort of what happens when you defend as well.
Right.
And it all felt really nice, it's like flowed really well.
Well, and then like what's neat is it too is as it's happening, you're picturing, oh, that character would do this, and then you're talking like him, you're getting him in positions, you're doing all those like, oh my gosh, I gotta get a picture here as we're doing this stuff, right?
Yeah.
So
as I said, Vader walked across the board and was like, hold on a second, I can just carve my way through all of these guys. And he did.
And he did.
Obviously, Shatterpoint is very established. You've obviously got the start set and all that kind of thing as well. But recently at AdeptCon and things, you guys have been showing off a roadmap that goes up into 2026. Can you sort of talk us through some of the high points? I mean, all of it's pretty high. And high ground. But can you talk us through some of those things that you've got sort of coming up for that?
Yeah, so it's going to be pretty fun. So like right now in the case at the show, we've brought the new, we have the Rift Hampson, and we have the new Aqua Droid and the Corns as we do more stuff with the Clone Wars. And then we've got things like the Delta Squad from Commando. So as we get on that, you're going to see more of these characters coming out. We've previewed off some Balin Skull and some stuff with...
Balin Skull.
Oh, totally, right? And so you're going to see like Morgan Elsbeth, you're going to see more of those from like Ahsoka and things like that. So as we kind of get there, you're going to see more of these guys come out. And then they also just dropped the new key operations stuff too. So you want to play more thematic ways to play. A lot of there. We have the new Galactic Legends coming out too, so you can kind of play that one character versus all kind of thing. So along with the miniatures, we have a lot of organized play and stuff coming out too. We also previewed a bunch of tournaments. So we have the new tournament kits coming out too, with new cards, new posters, things like that. So like it's not just the minis, which are also a lot coming out there, but if you want more ways to play, kind of too, like when you want to play in store, play at cons, you can do all that. Our grand tournament season just launched as well. Cool. So we're gonna have a lot of that going on. So it's gonna be fun. And like, and as you see more of these minis are on the way, it's gonna be neat. Yeah.
One of the things I quite like about the sort of structure of the normal games of Shatterpoint, which kind of feeds into the idea of tournaments and stuff, is you do that kind of 3-game arc. It's the best of 3 sort of system, and that works so well in stores. Like I've got a store near me that's running tournaments. I'm getting things painted up. I'm going to start joining in, and I'm going to enjoy the process of going through all of that and having some fun with that. I think my Shatterpoint collection is going to grow extensively over the next year or so. There's so many fun things coming down the pipeline. I need Jin and all that kind of stuff. It's going to be very cool.
That's going to be next.
Yes. So if you want to come and play a little bit of Shatterpoint, or you want to come and play some Legion, you can always come over to here. It's in Hall 3, I believe.
Hall
3. So you can come and check it out. There are banners and all sorts of things all over the place. Come and get some demos. Have some fun with both Legion and Shatterpoint. The miniatures are gorgeous. And we shall catch you guys in another video very, very soon. Watch the live blog. Watch the live stream. Comment down below. Bye for now.